Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up a file that it really sits at the intersection of biology, psychology, and just what it means to be human in this, very modern world.
Right. Mhm.
We're tackling a subject that I think a lot of people feel. I mean, maybe they feel it every single day, but very few people actually have the language to describe it.
And a lot of people are skeptical it's even a real thing.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
the word, skeptical.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit soft, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds a little woo-woo, like something you'd hear at a wellness retreat, not in a doctor's office.
Right. And that's actually the perfect place to start. I want to begin with a story from one of our main sources today, a thread from the Healthy Gamer subreddit that really, really caught my eye.
Okay.
It's a narrative from a 19-year-old guy. And he says this right at the top of his post. He explicitly says he used to be a complete skeptic.
Hmm.
He wrote off psychology as, and this is a quote, pseudoscience. He thought concepts like emotional limbs were just, a sign of weakness.
Which is a very common defense mechanism, honestly.
How so?
Well, if you don't understand why you're hurting, or if the pain feels kind of abstract and hard to pin down, it's just easier to say the diagnosis is fake.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, it protects you. It protects you from having to face the fact that you're missing something fundamental.
Right. So he says whenever he heard the term touch starvation or skin hunger,
Yeah.
he just rolled his eyes. He thought it was just something made up by influencers for clicks.
And then reality hit.
And then reality hit hard. He describes this slow, creeping realization of just how profoundly lonely he was. But, and this is the key, it wasn't just loneliness in his head.
It was somatic. It was in his body.
Exactly. He says, and this quote really stuck with me, it feels like there's a hole in my chest and it never goes away.
Wow. That visceral physical description, that's the core of it. That's the distinct marker that separates this from just, general sadness or a bad mood.
He talks about how sometimes it's just a mild ache, but other times it's so bad he can't even get out of bed. And the real clincher for him, the turning point, was when he realized what he was actually craving.
And it wasn't what he thought.
Not at all. He says, I thought it was sexual at first, but it's nothing like that. I want to be hugged. I want to be held.
And that distinction, that separation between sexual desire and the biological need for platonic, safe touch, that is the absolute heart of what we're discussing today.
So this young man, he's not dealing with a libido issue.
Not in the slightest. He's dealing with a physiological crisis. His body is literally sending out emergency signals for a critical resource that it's not getting. It's like a low fuel warning light, but for his nervous system.
So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt that weird hollow ache, or if you're like a Reddit user was and you think skin hunger just sounds like a made-up buzzword, stick around.
He's due.
Because we're going to be unpacking the data from sources like Talk to Angel, Choosing Therapy, and these really raw first-hand accounts to show you that this feeling, it isn't just in your head, it's in your biology.
Precisely. Our mission for this deep dive is to prove that a hug or a handshake or even just a hand on the shoulder isn't some social luxury. It's a biological necessity.
And we're going to look at what happens to the human machine, your actual hardware, when that fuel, the fuel of touch, runs out.
Let's do it.
So let's get a clear definition on the table first, just to set the stage. We see the terms touch starvation and skin hunger used pretty much interchangeably in the articles we looked at.
Yeah.
What are we actually defining here?
So simply put, touch starvation is the physiological and emotional deprivation that happens when a person lacks sufficient physical contact with other living beings.
And you're stressing that word, physiological.
I am, because it's the most important part. This is not just, I feel sad.
It's not just, I'm lonely.
Correct. Loneliness is a state of mind. It's a social condition. You can feel lonely in a packed stadium. Touch starvation is a somatic experience. It's your body on a cellular level crying out for regulation that it can only get from physical contact.
And it seems to be getting worse.
Massively. As our sources point out, we live in a world where digital connection is exploding, but physical connection is imploding. We are hyper-connected through our screens, but we are more physically isolated than ever before in human history.
And the result isn't just boredom or feeling a little down, it's actual agony, like the Reddit user described.
It is. It's a deprivation of a primary sense.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. You wouldn't say someone who is starving for food is just missing a lunch.
Right, that's absurd.
They are lacking a fundamental building block for survival. And touch is very, very similar. It is the first sense we develop in the womb. It's our primary language before we have words.
Okay, let's unpack the why then. Why is this a survival mechanism? Because I think most of us, We get why we need food. If I don't eat, my cells run out of energy and I die. Simple. But why do I need a pat on the back? Why does my biology care so much?
To understand that, we have to go right back to the very beginning of human development. The Talk to Angel article highlights that touch is one of the very first ways a human being experiences the world.
Before sight, even.
Before clear sight, yes. Remember, newborn babies have terrible eyesight. And before they can possibly understand language or tone of voice, they understand touch. A mother's touch is safety, it's warmth, it's food.
That's why skin-to-skin contact is standard hospital protocol now for newborns.
Exactly. It regulates their heart rate, their breathing, their temperature. It is literally how we learn safety. When a baby cries and is held, that physical pressure signals to their brand new nervous system, you are safe, you are not abandoned, the tribe is here.
And that wiring doesn't just disappear when we grow up.
It never disappears. It's hardwired into our nervous system for life. We are, at our core, pack animals. That fundamental need to be in physical proximity to our pack for safety never goes away.
So this brings us to the chemical exchange. This is where it gets really, really interesting for me. It's not magic. It's not sentiment. It's pure chemistry.
It is absolutely chemistry.
Yeah.
And there are two main players in this biological war going on inside your body when you're touch starved: the vagus nerve and the hormone system.
Okay, let's start with the vagus nerve. I hear about this thing all the time in wellness circles now. It's kind of having a moment. But what is it actually doing when someone gives you a hug?
So the vagus nerve is, think of it like the superhighway of your parasympathetic nervous system.
Rest and digest system.
Rest and digest system, exactly. Yeah. The opposite of fight or flight. This massive nerve connects your brain to basically all your major organs: your heart, your lungs, your gut.
And touch activates it.
Friendly, safe touch does, yes. When you get a hug or a hand on your shoulder, it stimulates these little pressure receptors under your skin. They're called Pacinian corpuscles.
Okay.
And those receptors send a signal directly up the vagus nerve to the brain.
And that signal basically says, chill out.
That is a perfect way to put it, yes. Okay. The Choosing Therapy source explains that this stimulation physically, measurably, lowers your heart rate and drops your blood pressure.
So it's a direct biological effect.
It's a direct biological brake pedal for your body's stress response. It sends a message to the amygdala, the brain's little fear center, that the threat is gone, you can stand down.
So without touch, we're essentially driving through life with our foot hovering off the brake.
It's worse than that. We're driving with the foot jammed on the gas pedal. And this brings us to the hormone war.
Cortisol versus oxytocin.
The ultimate showdown. When you are touch-starved, your body defaults to a state of high alert. It assumes you are isolated, and in evolutionary terms, an isolated primate is a primate in danger. So your cortisol levels, the stress hormone, remain chronically high.
And cortisol is the bad guy here, in the long term.
In short bursts, cortisol is your best friend. It saves your life. It helps you run from a predator. It mobilizes sugar for energy. It sharpens your focus. But when it stays high for weeks, months, or years because you haven't been held, it destroys you.
Oh, what does it do?
It leads to chronic anxiety, restlessness, poor sleep, systemic inflammation, weight gain, you name it. It just corrodes the system from the inside out.
And what's the antidote to that corrosion?
Oxytocin. People call it the love hormone, but I prefer to call it the connection hormone or the safety hormone.
Because it's not just romantic.
Not at all. A hug from a friend, petting your dog, even a really good handshake releases oxytocin. And what oxytocin does is it actively counteracts cortisol. It binds to receptors in your brain that basically tell your whole system to turn the stress volume down. It promotes feelings of trust, safety, and calm.
So, to put it all together, if you aren't getting touched,
Yeah.
you are chemically, biologically stuck in fight or flight mode.
That's it. In a nutshell, you are chemically incapable of fully relaxing. Your body is perpetually braced for a threat that never comes.
And the consequences of that are massive. We're not just talking about feeling jittery or anxious.
Not even close. The sources cite multiple studies, like the one from Walker and McGlone, showing that people with regular affectionate touch actually have better, stronger immune function.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying hugging can help you fight the flu? That sounds completely counterintuitive. You get sick from touching people, right?
Indirectly, yes. It's a paradox, but it's real. Remember what we said about high cortisol?
It's corrosive.
Right. And one of the first things it corrodes is your immune system. Specifically, high cortisol suppresses the production and effectiveness of lymphocytes, the white blood cells that are your body's frontline soldiers against viruses.
So if you lower the cortisol,
With touch, which releases oxytocin, your immune system works better. Your soldiers are back on the battlefield. The Talk to Angel blog explicitly lists weakened immunity as a direct physical symptom of touch starvation.
That is just wild. You spend your life thinking you get sick because you touched someone who had germs, but you can actually get sicker because you didn't touch anyone at all.
It's the paradox of being a social species. We need each other to survive, literally. An isolated wolf is a dead wolf. Our bodies know that on a primal level, even if our modern brains think we're perfectly fine living alone in a high rise apartment and ordering food on an app.
So the body literally internalizes the emotional lack. It translates the abstract feeling of I'm lonely into the concrete reality of my heart rate is elevated and my white blood cells are taking a nap.
That is a perfect summary. It is a translation of social data into biological damage.
Okay, so that's the biology.
Yeah.
That is the powerful why. Now, I want to shift into the what because the really scary thing about this condition is that you might be suffering from it and have no idea.
That's right.
You might just think you're having a bad month or that you've become an irritable person or you're just, tired all the time.
It's incredibly difficult to self-diagnose because the symptoms look so much like other common issues. It overlaps with depression, with anxiety, with general burnout. It often gets mislabeled, even by professionals.
So let's run through the checklist. Let's look at the diagnosis list from our sources at Choosing Therapy and Talk to Angel. What are the signs that you might be running on empty, touch-wise?
Well, the most obvious one, and the one the Reddit user felt most acutely, is that overarching sense of depression or emotional numbness. It's that hole in the chest feeling.
And that creates a vicious cycle, right?
A terrible one. It's a feedback loop. When you feel numb and disconnected and depressed, your instinct is to withdraw socially. You don't feel like seeing people.
Which, of course, means you get touched even less.
Exactly. The emotional distance creates more physical distance, which in turn creates more emotional distance. It's a downward spiral. You stop reaching out for connection because, on some level, you don't feel worthy of it anymore.
Okay, what about some of the less obvious signs? The Choosing Therapy list had a few that really surprised me. The first one was seeking validation.
Oh, this one is fascinating. When you don't get the fundamental physical validation of your existence, and that's what a hug is, at its core. It's a nonverbal physical acknowledgement that says you are here, you are real, and you matter to me. When that's missing,
You start looking for it elsewhere.
you start overcompensating. You might become a people pleaser, going way out of your way for verbal approval, for a good job, because you aren't getting that base level physical approval.
So you're trying to fill the physical tank with verbal fuel.
Precisely. And it doesn't work. You might post more on social media, fishing for likes because a like gives you a tiny little dopamine hit, but it doesn't give you the oxytocin, so you always stay hungry.
Wow. Okay, another big one on the list is decline in self-care. Personal hygiene dropping off? That seems extreme.
It is, and it's a really sad one to see. Part of it is just a classic symptom of depression, of course. But there's a touch-specific element to it.
Which is?
Touch helps validate our physical boundaries. It helps us feel real in our own skin. It defines where I end and the rest of the world begins. When no one touches you for a long time, you can start to feel almost disembodied, like a ghost.
And why would a ghost need to shower?
Exactly. Why would a ghost brush their teeth or comb their hair? If you feel invisible to the world, you start treating yourself like you're invisible.
That is just heartbreaking. But it makes a terrifying amount of sense.
It does. And then, of course, there are the sleep issues. The sources are very specific here. It's often a profound difficulty sleeping alone, especially if you were previously used to sleeping with a partner.
The Reddit user mentioned this. He talked about hugging his pillow at night and said it was damn near useless.
And that's a very common coping mechanism that ultimately fails because the pillow doesn't hug back. It doesn't provide the warmth, the weight, the responsive pressure that tells the nervous system it's safe to power down for the night.
We're meant to sleep in groups.
Evolutionarily, yes. We are designed to sleep in piles, surrounded by the warmth and safety of the tribe. Sleeping completely alone in a silent, dark box is a very new, very weird, and very stressful experiment for our species.
Now, here's the one that really stood out to me from that Reddit thread, and I feel like this symptom doesn't get talked about enough. Aggression.
Yes.
The user admitted, quite vulnerably, that he was boiling with rage when he saw happy couples holding hands, or even just saw Valentine's Day ads on TV.
This is such a crucial point. We often think of touch starvation as just sadness or loneliness, but we have to remember the cortisol,
The stress hormone.
The stress and threat hormone. Chronically high cortisol makes you irritable, agitated, and hypervigilant. It puts you on edge. This young man isn't just a hater or a bitter person. His body is in a state of high threat perception.
So seeing others with that connection.
It triggers a defensive, aggressive response. It's the fight part of fight or flight. He's not a bad person. He is chemically redlining. It's almost like resource guarding in animals.
That's a great analogy.
If you were starving to death and you saw someone casually eating a gourmet meal in front of you, you wouldn't feel happy for them. You'd feel a primal, violent rage. He is seeing other people consume the very resource his body is screaming for to survive.
And the agony he describes, that physical hole in his chest, is very real. But I want to contrast that with another comment from that same Reddit thread because it shows the other side of the coin.
Oh, are you talking about the user beloved Mickey?
That's the one. They described a brief romantic relationship they had after a long, long drought of any physical contact, and they finally got to cuddle.
And the description is just stunning.
It is. They said they felt a drug-like high, that they were physically vibrating and unable to stop smiling for hours.
And that tells us everything we need to know. If a simple, basic human act like cuddling feels like a powerful drug, it means your baseline level of that chemical in your system is dangerously, critically low.
It's like a starving person who thinks a dry cracker is the most delicious feast they've ever had.
It's a perfect analogy. A well-fed person thinks a cracker is just a cracker. A person who is well-regulated by touch thinks a hug is nice. But a starving person thinks it's a miracle.
If you're vibrating with joy from a simple cuddle, it's a sign of just how deep and painful the deficit was.
And we have to reiterate the point the original poster made so clearly. This intense craving is so often non-sexual. It's about emotional safety. He wants to be held, to be soothed, to be seen. He isn't asking for a one-night stand. He's asking for his nervous system to be regulated.
Okay, so we know why we need it, and we know what it looks like when we don't have it. But the big question is, why now? Why does it seem like this is becoming an epidemic? Is it really just as simple as saying we're all glued to our phones?
That's a huge part of it, but no, it's not the only factor. When we get to section 3 of our dive, looking at the modern causes, we see it's really a perfect storm of factors converging at once.
And we can't start that conversation without talking about the massive hangover from the pandemic.
Absolutely not. The COVID-19 lockdowns, as noted by both Talk to Angel and Choosing Therapy, were essentially a mass casualty event for physical touch on a global scale.
We were literally trained to see touch as dangerous.
We were conditioned for years to view other human bodies not as sources of comfort, but as potential biological weapons. We were told that being safe meant staying 6 feet apart.
And even though the lockdowns are over, those habits and that fear, it stuck around.
The habit stuck, and the fear lingered in our subconscious. The cultural muscle memory of the handshake or the hug hello was severely atrophied. And right on the heels of that, the entire culture of work shifted.
Remote work,
which is great for avoiding a commute and for flexibility, but it completely eliminated the casual, incidental, low-stakes touch of office life.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. The handshake with a client, the pat on the back for a job well done, even just bumping elbows with someone in the hallway on the way to the coffee machine.
Hundreds of tiny micro-interactions, all gone. And if you already live alone, which more and more people do, or if you move to a new town for that remote job, which choosing therapy notes is a major risk factor, you suddenly have 0 built-in access points for any human touch.
Your daily routine becomes bed to desk to couch, back to bed.
And you can go days, even weeks, without your skin touching another living thing.
But wait, we're more connected than ever, right? I'm on Zoom calls all day. I'm on FaceTime with my family. I'm sending heart emojis in the group chat. Doesn't that count for something?
And that is the great digital paradox. And this is a really, really important point. The Talk to Angel source states this explicitly. Virtual hugs, emojis, and video calls do not trigger the physiological oxytocin release.
You don't, not at all.
No. On an intellectual level, your brain understands the sentiment. You know your friend loves you. But your vagus nerve doesn't get the signal. Your skin's pressure receptors aren't activated. You cannot trick the biology with pixels.
Wow.
Your ancient, primitive brain is still scanning the immediate physical environment for warmth, for pheromones, for tactile feedback, for the physical presence of your pack, and it is finding nothing.
That perfectly explains the Reddit user's coping mechanism. He said he talks to an imaginary girlfriend, a girlfriend that I know doesn't exist.
It's absolutely tragic. He's using technology and his imagination to create a simulation of connection, but it's a placebo. It might numb the conscious mind for a moment, but it doesn't feed the body's physical need.
So technology acts as a barrier, almost.
It does, because it gives us the illusion of being social, which masks the problem. It convinces us we've met our social quota for the day without providing any of the physiological benefits of actually being in a room with someone.
It's like eating pictures of food. Your eyes see the feast, but your stomach is still empty.
That is the perfect analogy. You can scroll through Instagram and see all your friends and feel like you caught up with them, but your nervous system is still starving.
Okay, let's pivot.
Yeah.
Because we've painted a pretty bleak picture here. I imagine a lot of people listening might be nodding along, maybe feeling seeing a little exposed.
Right.
But this can't just be a diagnosis. We need to talk about solutions, the how. How do you fight this?
And we have to break this down into categories because telling someone who is profoundly isolated and has zero friends to just go hug someone is not only useless advice, it's cruel.
It completely ignores the reality of their situation.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to start with the solo strategies. If you are completely isolated, if it's 2 a.m. and you have that gaping hole in your chest, are you just doomed until you make a friend?
Right. What can you do right now by yourself?
You are not doomed. You have to learn to hack your own nervous system. You have to find ways to simulate the sensation of safe touch.
The Reddit user mentioned taking long, hot showers to simulate body heat. Is that a real thing?
It absolutely is. That's actually a scientifically valid strategy. The sensation of warmth on the skin triggers a similar vascular response to touch. It dilates the blood vessels, it relaxes the muscles, it even activates a part of brain called the insular cortex, which processes both physical warmth and social warmth.
So it's not a perfect substitute, but it helps.
It helps, it takes the edge off.
What about weighted blankets? I feel like those just exploded in popularity over the last few years.
And for good reason. Choosing Therapy recommends them because they provide something called deep pressure stimulation.
Okay, what's that?
That constant, gentle pressure mimics the feeling of being held or swaddled like a baby. It calms the nervous system by increasing what's called proprioceptive input, which is basically just your brain's sense of where your body is in space. It's very grounding and very calming for an anxious system.
And I assume body pillows work on a similar principle.
Same principle. It gives you something physical to align your body against, to press into. It reduces that terrifying feeling of just floating in a void when you're trying to sleep.
Now, the Taco Angel source mentions self-touch. And I want to be clear to our listeners, we're not talking about anything sexual here.
Not at all. We are talking about simple, soothing gestures. Gently rubbing your own arms from the shoulder down to the wrist, hugging your knees to your chest, or one of the most effective ones is just placing a hand firmly over your heart.
Just holding your hand on your chest.
Yes, applying gentle but firm pressure. It sounds incredibly simple, but that combination of warmth and pressure can activate those calming vagus nerve pathways. You are literally, physically telling your own body, I am here, I've got you, you're safe.
And there was one more, a mental hack. The reminiscing hack from choosing therapy.
Yes, this one is fascinating. The brain is an incredibly powerful tool. If you close your eyes and vividly, with all your senses, recall a memory of feeling loved and safe, a hug from a grandparent as a child, a moment with a past partner, cuddling a pet, you can actually trigger a micro-release of oxytocin.
Really? Just from a memory?
Just from a memory. It's not as strong or as lasting as the real thing, of course, but in a moment of crisis, it's a way to bridge the gap, to remind your body what safety feels like.
Okay, so that's the solo stuff. Let's move up the ladder of interaction. What if you're ready to interact with the living thing? But maybe. Not a person just yet.
Then you get a pet. Full stop.
The Reddit thread was completely unanimous on this point.
As it should be. Animals are the ultimate touch therapy. Dogs, cats, even smaller animals. They provide unconditional, non-judgmental physical affection.
As a two-way street, right?
It's a mutually beneficial biological loop. When you cuddle or pet a dog, it releases oxytocin in your brain, and studies show it releases oxytocin in the dog's brain too. You are both getting the chemical benefits of that connection.
And you don't have to worry about social anxiety with a golden retriever. He's not going to reject your hug.
Never. He's just happy you're there. And that's key. It removes the fear of rejection, which is often the biggest barrier that keeps touch-starved people from seeking connection in the first place.
Okay, now let's get into the really interesting stuff. The unconventional social solutions.
Yeah.
Because that Reddit thread had some really creative out of the box ideas that I honestly had never considered before.
This is where it gets fascinating, because when a society fails to provide a basic human need through its normal channels, people will always find workarounds. They'll hack the system.
And one of the top suggestions from a commenter was Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
I know, it sounds so aggressive, doesn't it? I'm feeling lonely and craving a hug, so I'm gonna go learn how to choke someone.
Right. It seems like the opposite of what you'd want. But the commenter made such a great point. He said it involves constant grappling, and that, quote, men in that sport tend to be huggy people.
It's brilliant because it breaks the touch barrier in a socially acceptable, even celebrated masculine way. For men especially, who are often culturally discouraged from platonic touch with other men, contact sports provide a safe container.
A venue where it's not just okay, but necessary to be in close physical proximity.
Exactly. You are getting that deep pressure touch. You're engaging your whole body with another human being, but it's all framed as combat or training, so it completely bypasses the social awkwardness or vulnerability of asking for a hug.
That is so smart. It's safe touch because it has a clear set of rules and a goal that isn't intimacy.
Right. And the level of trust required to spar with someone, to literally put your body in their hands, builds a powerful bond very, very quickly.
Okay, another one that came up was social dance.
A more classic solution, but just as effective. Salsa, ballroom, swing dancing, tango. You are intentionally entering a community where touch is the primary medium of communication.
You can't dance salsa without holding your partner.
You can't. It creates a built-in, no questions asked excuse for physical contact that is structured, respectful, and generally non-sexual, but still highly connected.
And then there was the most surprising one for me. The user trans navigation suggested BDSM clubs.
Yes. And we need to approach this with an open mind because their reasoning was very specific and very insightful.
They weren't suggesting it for the hardcore stuff, as they put it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They specifically said they found solace in those spaces because non-sexual, casual, platonic physical contact was not only accepted, but often encouraged.
They even mentioned things like cuddle puddles.
Right. And here's why that can work. Those communities, at least the healthy ones, often prioritize explicit consent and communication above all else. Because the context is inherently edgy or risky, the rules of engagement have to be incredibly strict and clear.
So it can actually feel safer.
Paradoxically, yes. It can be a safer space for platonic touch than a regular bar or nightclub, because the rules are so clearly defined. Everyone knows how to ask, how to say no, and how to respect boundaries. It's about finding any space where the normal social barriers to touch are intentionally lowered.
That is a really profound insight.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the places that seem the most extreme on the surface are actually the most fundamentally human underneath.
It's about stripping away all the social pretense and just finding a way to meet the raw biological need.
Now, what if you're not ready for a hobby and you just want to pay for a solution? We have to talk about the cuddle economy.
We do. And the most standard, widely accepted version of this is massage therapy.
Right.
It's safe, it's professional, it's therapeutic. It works on a muscular level to relieve tension and on a nervous system level to provide that calming, regulating touch. It's a fantastic option.
But then there's the more literal solution, professional cuddling. I honestly didn't even know this was a real industry until recently. And the Reddit user Arthritis Tan C actually tried a service like this.
He did. And his review of the experience is just heartbreakingly honest. He described it as profoundly bittersweet.
He said the professional cuddler was lovely, the experience itself was good, it felt nice, but it left him with a longing in my chest for something more.
And that right there is the critical limitation of any kind of professional or paid-for touch. It can fix the immediate physiological need, the body feels held, the cortisol drops, but it simultaneously highlights the emotional gap.
It reminds you that this is a transaction.
Exactly. It reminds you that this person is being paid to be there. It's a Band-Aid, a very effective Band-Aid that can stop the bleeding for a little while, but it doesn't heal the deeper wound of loneliness or the lack of a genuine emotional connection.
He did say it reminded him of what he was missing from past relationships, and it made him want to try harder to find a real partner. So maybe it served a purpose in that way.
I think it absolutely did. It broke the paralysis. It gave him a taste of what he was fighting for, which can be incredibly motivating, but it's not a sustainable long-term solution.
And finally, in this professional realm, there's psychotherapy.
This is absolutely crucial if the root cause of your touch starvation isn't a lack of opportunity, but a fear of intimacy.
What do you mean?
Talk to Angel points this out. Some people are starved not because nobody wants to touch them, but because they are terrified to be touched. This can be due to past trauma, deep seated vulnerability issues, or severe social anxiety. Therapy is the place to clear that debris, to understand the barriers you're putting up so you can actually build the healthy relationships you need.
Okay, so we've covered the solo hacks, the pets, the hobbies, and the professionals. But let's bring it all home and land on section 6, actionable advice for reconnection. For the average person listening, how do we start to fix this, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us in our daily lives?
The single biggest thing we can do is to actively work to normalize platonic touch. We have to consciously bring it back into the daily lexicon of friendship and community.
The Reddit advice for this was great. One user just said, elaborate handshakes.
It sounds silly, but it's brilliant. Turning a standard formal handshake into a clasp or a half hug, bro hug, extends the duration of contact by a few seconds. That small change signals we are close, we are friends. It shifts the entire dynamic from formal to personal.
And Talk to Angels suggested even simpler things, like a brief pat on the shoulder when you're encouraging a coworker.
It's all about lowering the barrier to entry. If you make it a habit to greet your close friends with a genuine hug instead of just a wave, you create a culture of hugging within your circle. You have to be the change you want to feel, so to speak.
Another great practical suggestion from choosing therapy was volunteering.
Yes, in a soup kitchen, a hospital, an animal shelter. Even if you aren't directly hugging the people you're serving, you are in the physical energy and presence of other human beings. You're working alongside them, shoulder to shoulder. That proximity itself matters. It breaks the isolation bubble.
And finally, the last piece of advice.
Yeah.
And probably the hardest one, communication.
This is the final boss for sure. You have to find a way to admit the need. You have to be able to say the words, I am starved.
That sounds so incredibly vulnerable.
It is. But if you can reframe it in your mind as a simple, factual medical statement, the same way you might say, I am dehydrated, or I think I have a vitamin deficiency, it helps take some of the shame out of it.
That's a great way to think about it.
If you can go to a close, trusted friend and say, hey, I've been feeling really isolated lately, and honestly, I think I'm just starved for a hug. Can I get one? I would bet that 9 times out of 10, they will say yes.
Because they probably need one too.
Exactly. That's the secret. Everyone is walking around pretending they're a stoic island, but we all have the same primate biology. We are all hiding the same hunger.
So let's bring this all together. Let's wrap this deep dive up. What is the big picture takeaway here?
The big picture is that we cannot biohack our way out of our fundamental humanity. Touch starvation is a real, legitimate medical phenomenon. It's not a weakness. It involves cortisol poisoning your system and a deficit of oxytocin keeping you anxious and disconnected.
And it manifests as real physical problems.
As physical pain, as rage, as sleep disorders, and as a weakened immune system. But recovery is absolutely possible.
It is.
It is. Whether it starts with a weighted blanket and then moves to adopting a cat and then joining a jujitsu class, or just finally getting the courage to ask a friend for a real hug, you can refill the tank.
I want to end with one final thought, something that really struck me as I was reading through all these sources. We keep coming back to that Reddit user, the one who said a simple hug felt like a drug-like high.
Yes.
It just made me think, if a simple everyday act of affection feels like a powerful narcotic, to a person who is starving for it, are we just vastly criminally underestimating the power we hold in our hands every single day?
That's a beautiful way to put it.
You know, we walk around with this incredible life-saving medicine that costs absolutely nothing, and most of the time, we just keep it in our pockets. In this hyper-digital, isolated world, maybe the most radical, rebellious act of healthcare you can offer someone is just being physically present, just touching their shoulder and letting them know wordlessly that they exist and they matter.
I think you're absolutely right. We are each other's medicine. We just have to be brave enough to administer the dose.
Well, on that note, I think I'm going to go hug my dog, or my neighbor, or whoever is closest.
Maybe start with the dog, just to be safe.
Fair point. Thank you all for listening to this deep dive. We hope it helped fill that void just a little bit, or at least give you a map to find your way out.
Take care of yourselves and each other.
We'll see you next time.